Coast News.
Today we're going to do something Olympia hopes you won't do. Actually reading the bills, reading the Constitution, and comparing the two.
Because when you line up HB 2097, HB 2100, HB 2115, you don't just see tax policy.
You see a pattern of lawmakers testing how far they can push the Washington state Constitution without triggering voter backlash.
And before we even get into the new bills, you need to understand how extreme Washington's existing tax structure already is.
Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net. News and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal west coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net.
Washington's existing B&O tax system. Washington does not have a traditional income tax, but that doesn't mean it's a low tax state.
Instead, Washington relies heavily on a business and occupation tax, which is a gross receipts tax, meaning businesses are taxed on revenue, not profit.
According to the Tax Foundation, only 7 states in the entire country use a statewide gross receipts tax system at all, and Washington's B&O rates are among the highest in the nation.
And this is critical. Washington's B&O tax applies even if a business loses money.
No deductions for payroll, no deductions for raw materials, no deductions for rent or utilities.
Economists across the political spectrum agree gross receipts taxes are economically destructive because they stack taxes at every stage of production, something the Tax Foundation explicitly warns against.
And now, lawmakers want to pile more. Not statewide, but county by county.
We're going to talk about HB 2097, which was introduced by Representative Sean Scott, a Democrat out of Seattle. He is newly elected, and he is a Democrat Socialist of America member. County B&O taxes. HB 2097 is sponsored by Representative Sean Scott, a Democrat, and it would authorize counties to impose their own gross receipts taxes on top of the state's already high B&O tax.
This is not a small change. It fundamentally alters how taxation works in Washington. Article 7, Section 1 of the Washington Constitution, the Uniformity Clause.
Article 7, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution says taxes must be uniform upon the same class of property.
Uniformity doesn't just mean similar, it means equal in legal effect.
The Washington Supreme Court has repeatedly held that if the same activity is taxed differently based solely on location or classification, uniformity is violated.
House Bill 2097 guarantees non-uniformity because counties can set different rates, define exemptions differently, and choose who qualifies as taxable.
So a plumbing business in Pierce County could face an entirely different tax burden than the exact same plumbing business in Lewis County.
That's not incidental. That's structural inequality. Article 1, Section 12, Privileges and Immunities says,
Article 1, Section 12 prohibits the legislature from granting special privileges or immunities to certain classes.
That clause exists specifically to stop politically favored groups from being protected while others are punished.
HB 2097 opens the door to selective exemptions negotiated at the county level.
If you're politically connected, you get carve-outs. If you're a small business without lobbyists, you pay full freight.
That's precisely what Article 1, Section 12 was written to prevent. Article 11, limits on county power.
Counties do not possess inherent sovereignty. They only have powers explicitly granted by the state.
And when the legislature delegates taxing authority, courts require that delegation to be narrow, specific, and constrained.
House Bill 2097 does the opposite. It hands the counties broad discretion with minimal constitutional guardrails.
This is not decentralization, it's abdication.
House Bill 2097 violates tax uniformity, equal protection, proper limits on local government authority.
And it does so in a state that already has one of the most aggressive gross receipts tax regimes in the country. Now we're going to talk about HB 2100, a payroll tax, a backdoor income tax. This was sponsored by Sean Scott, Democrat, Jamila Mena, Democrat, Suzanne Thomas, Democrat, Joe T. Reed, Democrat, Lauren Parsley, Democrat, Paul Hill, Democrat, and Joe Ryu, Democrat.
House Bill 2100 is marketed as a payroll expense tax, but constitutionally, labels don't matter. Substance does. Article 7 is the income as property.
Washington courts have ruled repeatedly that income is property.
And property taxes must be uniform, not progressive.
HB 2100 taxes wages above a threshold at a higher rate based on income level. That threshold is $125,000. If you work a lot of overtime, it's not really that hard to hit the threshold.
That is the textbook definition of a progressive income tax, which Washington's Constitution does not allow without amendment.
Economic nexus and due process. There's also a due process issue here.
House Bill 2100 penalizes employers for employing high-earning workers, regardless of whether the economic value of the labor is realized in Washington.
That creates a distorted nexus between taxation and actual economic activity, something courts have repeatedly flagged as unconstitutional. Article 1, Section 12 is the class-based punishment clause.
This bill explicitly targets large operating companies. The state's definition of a large operating company is 40 or more people. Not really a large company. More like a mid-sized company or even a small business.
That is class-based taxation, singling out a group not because of conduct, but because of size and success.
The Washington Constitution does not allow punishment by taxes aimed at political unpopular classes.
Article 2, Section 19, the single subject rule. HB 2100 also violates the single subject rule.
It bundles taxation, federal political commentary, social program funding, new bureaucratic boards.
That's log rolling, forcing legislators to vote yes on things they might otherwise oppose.
House Bill 2100 is a deliberate attempt to re-engineer an income tax without voter approval.
And constitutionally, that matters. At the end of the day, if you don't believe this tax would eventually be placed on everyone, I think you're sadly mistaken. And what about all the other taxes we pay? Most states with an income tax don't have a sales tax. I promise you, none of that's going away if we get a sales tax. Now, for a change of pace, we're going to talk about HB 2115, the Precious Metals Tax Restoration Bill, which had bipartisan supporters.
House Bill 2115 is the outlier, and, ironically, it proves lawmakers know how to respect constitutional boundaries.
Precious metals are stores of value, not consumer goods. Article 1, Section 23 talks about this under property rights.
Washington's Constitution protects lawful acquisition and possession of property.
Taxing bullion as retail merchandise undermines that protection.
House Bill 2115 restores proper classification and constitutional consistency.
When you zoom out, the pattern is clear.
Washington already has one of the highest gross receipts tax burdens in the country.
Now lawmakers want to expand it to counties, disguise income taxes, punish success, and bypass voters.
The Constitution was written to stop exactly this kind of behavior.
And the more Olympia treats it like a speed bump instead of a boundary, the closer we get to real legal reckoning.
When you strip away the talking points and the political spin, what we're really talking about here is whether Washington state constitution still means anything to the people writing the laws.
Because once lawmakers decide they can tax around the Constitution instead of within it, there's no limit on what comes next.
Washington already has one of the most aggressive gross receipts tax systems in the country, and instead of fixing that, Olympia is doubling down, pushing more power down to the counties and disguising income taxes as something else.
The Constitution wasn't written to be flexible when it's convenient. It was written to set boundaries, and those boundaries exist to protect you, not the political class.
Read the bills, follow the money, and pay attention to who's sponsoring this stuff.
Because once uniformity, property rights, and voter consent are gone, they don't come back quietly.
Thanks for listening to Left Coast News.
We'll keep reading the fine print so you don't have to. Stay tuned. We'll have more about the terrible legislation that's being filed during this session. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can stay on top of these bills that will affect your life and what you can do about it.